So hello and welcome to the video. Now I've made a couple of videos now about how to get status with a variety of airlines from taking just one around the world trip. A carefully planned and executed around the world trip for sure, but you just need one of them. And I got so excited about the prospect of doing this, I couldn't resist the temptation to book one for myself. So I did. And in this video, I'll share the full experience from how I planned it, how I chose the specific flights I wanted to take, and how I actually booked it. And in September, I'll be making a trip that should create some really interesting content for the channel, as well as getting me Emerald status in the OneWorld Alliance. If you'd like to see what happened, stick around. Hi, I'm Matt and this is Matt's Planet. I aim to entertain, educate and inspire with my travel adventures from planning to execution. I'll show you how you can travel in style for a lot less than you'd think. So subscribe so you can come with me. So I suppose the first question is, who am I looking to credit to? And the first answer to that first question is that if I didn't have this channel, I'd probably not chase status with anyone. Many have reported a huge sense of freedom from becoming freelancers, being able to choose whatever airline makes the most sense for any particular trip, regardless of the alliance. And that's a particularly shrewd approach if you tend to travel in premium cabins anyway, when mid-level status doesn't make a huge difference to the travel experience. High-level status may bring extra baggage allowances and access to better lounges, but that may not carry a huge value for many. So if that's you, enjoy your freedom. But I do have a YouTube channel and I do like to be able to show the premium lounges that are available around the world. Plus, I do travel enough in economy such that doing so with status makes a difference. Plus, the costs of chasing status are deductible for me, as it's a business expense. So there's 14 airlines in the OneWorld Alliance, with Oman Air becoming the 15th quite soon. But I like Avios, and I want to stay within the Avios universe. Some schemes, notably Royal Jordanian, offer pathways to status that might end up being slightly easier and slightly cheaper than what I'm going to end up doing, but I'm concerned about how I'd realise the value out of the reward points I'd earn. When considering options, you need to consider the net cost of status, which is what you pay less the value of any points that you earn. I'd be concerned that any reward points I earned into a non-Avios scheme might prove to be tricky to convert into tangible value. So that limits me to BA, Iberia, Qatar and Finnair within the OneWorld Alliance. The first two are out, as they're IAG airlines, and any trust I had has been seriously eroded by their recent actions. I would probably lean towards Qatar, all else being equal, as they have a much wider route network than Finnair, and their product is arguably superior. Arguably long haul, but certainly short haul. But Qatar will only give you status for a year, plus a further year at the next tier down if you don't fly enough to maintain that top tier status. Plus there's a potential dark cloud on the horizon that Qatar may shift its scheme to a spend-based system, which may substantially change the economics of achieving or retaining status. That's obviously a risk of picking any scheme, but it seems particularly acute with Qatar. So it's going to be Finnair. I really like the airline, which I think is actually quite important if you're going to tie yourself to them. I have Star Alliance Gold status through Aegean and I really enjoy flying with Aegean, and I'm optimistic I'll have the same relationship with Finnair. I think Finnair will be a little cheaper and easier to get and maintain status with than Qatar will be. Plus I feel the benefits Finnair gives to its high status holders work a little better for me. I'm looking forward to taking advantage of those upgrade vouchers. So Finnair it is, and a quick point about the permanence of a decision like this. I'm 54, hard to believe, I know, and I'm never going to achieve lifetime status in any airline scheme. I travelled around the world for 25 years, so haven't consistently had a home airline to credit to. I was on around 9,000 of the 35,000 lifetime tier points I would have needed to get BA Lifetime Gold, before the changes of course, and I'm £423,000 away from Lifetime Gold under the new scheme, and as that's a net amount excluding the taxes you need to pay, that's more like £500,000 in real money. So I have no lifetime status variable in my decision, although you might. And if you're close to lifetime status with BA, there'll be a little sequence later on you'll want to stick around for. But for me, for the next couple of years, it's going to be Finnair. After that, if BA looks good again, or if Qatar does, or perhaps Oman Air will adopt Avios and they'll turn out to have a killer scheme, then I'll have no issues with moving my loyalty again to whoever works best for me at that point in time. So I needed to plan an around the world ticket crediting to Finnair. I'll not repeat the other videos, but I'll need 80,000 Finnair tier points, and flying on BA, AA, Iberia and Finnair will yield points at 250% of miles flown under a D booking fare, which is where these around the world tickets book. I called them the Fab 4 in my earlier video, but the Fabby 4 probably sounds better. Anywho. So I set myself some goals. I wanted to at least break even on Avios. Finnair's scheme allows you to convert 67,500 Avios into 22,500 tier points to help you on your way to their Emerald tier. That's a really handy way of topping off the points you earn from travelling. I've said before that these will always be the cheapest way of getting tier points. And if you're comparing the cost of converting Avios to the cost of taking a trip, this will always be true. But in the context of an around the world ticket, the economics are a little different. Flying from Boston to Atlanta via Raleigh-Durham is 14 miles longer than flying via Charlotte, which gives you 35 more tier points at 250% of miles flown. These extra tier points are effectively free if you route that way, as the fare doesn't change. Specific airport charges might increase the taxes and fees a little, but then again they might also reduce them if you transit an airport with lower fees. And getting tier points for free is even better than getting them from converting Avios. So as long as there was more juice to squeeze out of that lemon, or more miles that can be flown under the same priced ticket, I couldn't see the value of trading in Avios for tier points, particularly as I have historically gotten a return of 5p per Avio on redemptions, which I'll share more on later. So it didn't make much sense to me to invest any Avios in getting status, provided there was still more opportunity left in the ticket that I bought. So I decided very early on to travel westwards. This gets you around the world in fewer, longer days and gives greater opportunity to take day flights where you can enjoy the service rather than sleeping through the flight. Specifically, you get one fewer day of travel, but the days you do get will be longer. And that missed day is given back to you from crossing the date line. It takes a bit to get your head around what happens crossing that date line, and it works the other way going the other way round. I'm repeating content from an earlier video, but travelling that way yields fewer bonus tier points, but that was a price I was happy to pay for a better travel experience. So this was the trip I'd priced up as part of that Finnair video, and let me take a moment to talk through how this table works. There's 8 flights in this trip, beginning and ending in Oslo. The distances are taken from gcmap.com, which won't be exactly the same as the numbers Finnair uses, but they're pretty close. The Fab, or Fabby 4, give you a 250% multiplier, other airlines give 125%. You need to track your status level within Finnair's scheme, as bonus tier points are earned on flights on the Fab 4 when you have silver status or higher. So this trip covers just under 24,000 miles and delivers 59,000 tier points. You'd need another 21,000 to get to Emerald, which are available from buying them with Avios, and it will cost you just under 63,000 Avios, as each tier point costs 3 of them. You'll earn less than that from flying, specifically 59,000 Avios, as tier points and Avios are helpfully earned at the same rate. So taking this routing means you'll need to invest 3,700 Avios in getting status, which isn't that many really. This prices up as a done 3 fare as you cross 3 of the 6 continents, and will cost a total of 61,750 NOK, which is about £4,400. I have validated that fare as accurate through the OneWorld website. This trip yields 13.3 tier points per pound from flying. You earn 59,000 avios, but spend 63,000 to get the extra tier points you need for status. So assuming a cost of 1p each for the 4,000 you need, that's a net cost of £37 for the extra 21,000 points you need, bringing the total tier point per pound ratio up to 17.8, which is pretty good. And that should give you Emerald status with Finnair for 2 years, provided you join their scheme immediately prior to undertaking this trip. And it's not a bad plan, although it breaks my arbitrary rule of being at least neutral when it comes to the avios earned from the trip. Plus, it's not that realistic a plan as it assumes you'll start and end in Oslo. So my first decision concerned stopovers. You need a minimum of 2 stopovers of at least 24 hours for the fare to work. For domestic reasons, I want to get around the world as quickly as possible. It's a shame, as this is a trip that I'd happily invest 3 months in, but my domestic circumstances don't allow it. So I was strongly attracted to push that last flight from London to Oslo back and keeping it up my sleeve for the future, either as a standalone trip to Oslo or Svalbard, or as the positioning flight for a future trip from Oslo or somewhere else in Scandinavia. Doing so would lock in one of the 2 stopovers you need in London, meaning you only need to force one more on the way around the world to make the ticket work. I was keen to do this as I find those last legs on trips like this to be quite gruelling. It's physically and mentally a bit of a pain to have to fly to and from Oslo straight after flying in from Singapore. It's much more pleasant to leave that trip for another day. You do need to fly to Oslo to close out the circumnavigation though. I never recommend you drop the last flight, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it here. Dropping that last leg means the airline is well within its rights to reprice the trip based on what you actually flew, and that would deliver you a hefty bill. I'm not saying they will, but it's a risk I wouldn't want to take. Delaying that flight until later in the year means you won't be able to count those points towards your status goal, and you will need to add a positioning flight to the calculations to get you to Oslo to start this. So that brings the points you'll earn down to 57,000, and you'll need to contribute even more avios to close the tier point gap. So the net points per pound rate drops a little to 17.3, which is still quite reasonable. This is now a realistic and executable trip that would get you status, and is still quite an attractive trip to undertake. But I still wasn't happy with that. As we've discussed, there's still far more juice available to squeeze from this fare type. One option is to add more flights within Asia. You can really rack up the miles by flying from Seoul to India and back to Singapore before heading back to Europe. But that would be on airlines outside of the FABE 4. No code shares would be available on those sorts of flights. So it would be quite a lot of extra flying for not a huge amount of extra tier points. It may work for you, but it doesn't really appeal to me. So I took a closer look at American's options to Asia. That flight to Seoul departs DFW around 10 AM, so it's very difficult to connect in the same day, forcing a night in Dallas, which felt unnecessary. Here's American's flight network again, and to stick within the 3-continent fare by flying Trans-Pacific to Asia, you have the choice of Tokyo, Seoul or Shanghai, from New York, Dallas, LA, and from January, Vegas as well. But they also fly to Australia, so could adding a 4th continent be a good idea? And for me, it was, but not to Australia. American flies to Argentina, which is right at the very top of my places to visit list, so I thought this would be a good chance to spend some time there. Not a lot of time, but if I made Buenos Aires a stopover city, I could be there for long enough to decide if it's a place I needed to get back to. So with that locked in, the point haul increased quite sharply. But I realised that even though I had my 2 stopovers then set on Buenos Aires and London, there was still a lot of flying to get me from Argentina all the way back to London via Asia without taking a break somewhere. By now, I'd also gotten quite excited about visiting Seoul. It's a place I visited 23 years ago, and it's a place I'm really keen to get back to, more so than Tokyo actually. So I added a third stopover in Seoul. I also realised that that base trip didn't take advantage of the ability to fly on code shares, flying on airline A, which would ordinarily yield points at 125% of miles flown, but doing so under the flight number of an airline which delivers 250%. And specifically, I wanted to fly on JAL's new A350-1000 under an American Airlines flight number. So I came up with this routing, which got me to South America and Seoul. I actually had about 15 iterations of this trip before I got to this one, but I'll skip those. If I could get on that long JAL flight under an AA flight number, I'd get more than the 80,000 points I needed just from the trip, meaning all of the avios I earned would be banked without needing to convert any into tier points, which I liked the idea of. This becomes a done for fare, although it could also be priced as a Global Explorer trip as it's less than 34,000 miles in total. The price of both of those tickets is the same. You can see here how flying the other way around the world would be better, as those first 5 flights don't earn any bonuses when they all would if flown the other way around. Plus the 3 non-Fave 4 flights come later in the trip when you would be earning bonuses. Indeed, I reversed that trip to see what happened if you did indeed go the other way round, and you'd earn an extra 1100 tier points and avios from flying that way. So that's now 16.0 tier points per pound on the base fare and 18.7 when adjusted for the avios impact. And although the flight back to Oslo can't be included in the count to achieve status, you will get those avios when you eventually take that flight, so I've included them in the costing. And from that avios haul, the net fare of 4,350 is actually 260 quid less than that baseline routing we looked at. A quick aside. I track the redemptions I make with my avios and make a video about them every year. Here's last year's video. Over 3 years, I've got just over 5p in value for each avio redeemed. Now, I will readily concede that I tend to make one-way redemptions which deliver lots of value, and there's no way I would actually ever pay those cash fares if a redemption wasn't available. But even so, I can comfortably get 2.5p per avio in true value from my redemptions. So if you go back to that routing and value the net avios I earn at that more realistic rate of 2.5p each, I'll get 2 grand in value from those avios, and the net tier points per pound will shoot up to 26.7. The net cost of status is therefore a little over £3,000, which isn't a world away from what we used to look to pay when gaining status with BA under their old scheme. When you ever look at a trip like this, you really need to put an appropriate value on those avios. I was happy with that trip, so could I book it? Well, getting on that codeshare flight to Tokyo is really crucial to the total. You drop over 10,000 tier points if you fly it under a JAL flight number, taking into account the impact on that flight and the lost bonuses on subsequent flights as you pass through the status tiers more slowly. So as the OneWorld website doesn't offer you the codeshare versions of flights, that's not going to be an option. If you don't need the code shares, it is an option, and I'd argue it's an option even if you have to add a 3% foreign exchange fee to the total cost. And that's because you avoid lengthy phone calls to idiot booking agents at airlines, as I'll illustrate in just a moment. If you value your time at all, being able to click a button, pay online and get everything sorted in seconds is quite compelling. And the site is excellent in how it facilitates the building of a trip. Now, one of my patrons has booked a ticket through the website and reported that it worked smoothly. The only unexpected element was that, despite the first flight being with BA, the ticket was issued by Qantas, despite there being no Qantas flights at all in his itinerary. I've no idea why that happened, and I had read that it does happen, but it should make very little difference, except if something goes wrong. It might be a little more challenging to make contact with Qantas in the event of disruption, and Qantas doesn't have the best reputation when it comes to the quality of their customer service team, particularly as you'll be treated as if you have no status if you call them. So booking online should work, but it may bring some annoyances you'd want to avoid, and it wasn't an option for me as I wanted to fly under code shares. So I called BA 4 times. I had every flight planned out, I knew exactly what I wanted and had fallback options ready for pretty much each sector to cover most eventualities too. And my first call took 53 minutes, which involved about 35 minutes of the agent putting me on hold while she got advice from someone up the chain on what to do. She was actually lovely, but clearly hadn't done one of these before. Two things emerged from the call. One, BA won't offer code share legs, and American has the ability to hide availability from BA. They were described as revenue protection blocks by the agent. So I couldn't book on that JAL flight to Tokyo under an AA flight number, but neither could I book on the direct service offered by American on the day I wanted to fly, AA167, if you're taking notes. I had Expert Flyer open during the call, which is a system that allows you to look into the reservation system to see what's available, and that AA167 was showing D7, meaning 7 seats were available for sale in the fare code we were looking at. And that code share flight, AA8402, was also showing D7. So the seats were there, but American wouldn't allow BA to sell them. So I cobbled together some alternatives so I could at least see what BA came back with as a price, and the agent sent them off to the pricing team. Now, as BA wasn't able to do anything the website couldn't, I could price up the exact same flights on the website, so I knew what the price should come back at. Indeed, BA was offering me less than the website could, as I could select that blocked American Airlines flight online. And about 8 hours later, I missed a call from BA, then received 3 identical emails inviting me to call them to discuss my booking. So I did, and again I didn't get the best agent. She reported that the itinerary couldn't be priced as the routing we'd blocked out didn't meet the minimum connection time in Singapore. The routing allowed 70 minutes, the pricing team said that the minimum connection time was 90 minutes. Now the website didn't have an issue pricing a 70-minute connection, and I'd been able to get all the way to the payment page without an issue flagging up. I don't know if the airline actually ticketing this behind the website would have vetoed the booking as it didn't meet that MCT, but I double checked in Expert Flyer and it did indeed say 90 minutes for an international to international connection in Singapore. I don't know, and I don't think I'll ever know, whether the website would have ticketed it, but the computer said no for BA. So the BA agent assisted me in working out an alternative, which was then resent for pricing. Only a 32-minute call this time. And this time there were no emails urging me to call, so I did call back myself a couple of days later and actually got a chap who claimed to be a trainer of BA agents who handles around the world tickets. He was actually quite arrogant, and I took an instant dislike to him as he thought the changes to the BA scheme were excellent, as they would flush out all of the non-corporate travellers who don't make BA much money. I'm sure he's destined for the boardroom at BA with that attitude. A price had come back, which was about £100 higher than I was expecting from the website. The base fare came in exactly as predicted, but the chap was unable to share the breakdown of the taxes and fees as the pricing team doesn't share the tax breakdown, which is why I call the BA pricing team the random number generators. It's really annoying that they don't share this information, as the OneWorld website is able to do so instantly. But as the chap seemed knowledgeable, I asked him about code shares, and he was quite open that BA just doesn't allow them, even though they're allowed according to the fare rules. He said they cost the airline more, so BA just doesn't do them. I guess an airline is completely free to do what they want, although it seems strange that a OneWorld airline won't follow OneWorld fare rules. Now, what I'd asked to be priced had been a knee-jerk response to that Singapore minimum connection issue, so in the interim I'd worked out an even better option, and the chap was able to change the booking to reflect what I now wanted, and again it was sent off to the random number generators. 3 days passed, 4 days passed, On day 5, I called BA for a 4th time. Somehow, agent number 3, that around the world expert, had managed to delete the first and last flights from the booking, leaving an itinerary that started and ended in London. And as there were no BA flights left in that itinerary, the pricing team refused to price it. They'd allegedly sent a message to the agent who I'd last spoken to, upon receipt of which he should have called me to follow up. But he didn't. He's definitely boardroom material with that track record. Now, agent number 4 was really nice, was really apologetic, and was actually quite embarrassed about what had happened, but I'd made up my mind by this point that BA wasn't the way to go. They wouldn't book code shares, and their pricing had come in higher than the website, even with an FX fee. So I thanked the agent very much for her time and asked her to just delete the whole thing. My decision to give up on BA was not undermined in any way by those 4 interactions with them. And I was happy to bin the BA pathway to a ticket as, by this point, I was talking to Propeller Travel. I've known about Propeller for some time now and had worked with them on a complex booking before. They have a good reputation for handling tricky stuff and are very well known in the frequent flyer community. I completed their website's inquiry form, including the code share flights I wanted, and my request was swiftly picked up by the wonderful Martin. Very quickly, he was able to block out a booking including the code shares and was able to give me a good idea of how it would price up. Indeed, Martin was so engaged in the process that he recommended further embellishments to rack up the points even further, and one of them was so appealing, I went for it. And that was, instead of heading straight from London to Oslo to close out the trip, to go there through Doha on Qatar. This didn't change the fare. It took it over the 34,000 mile ceiling for a Global Explorer fare, but was still an acceptable done for routing, as the Middle East is considered to be in Europe according to those tickets. It did add a long-haul air passenger duty to the taxes, plus a hefty airline surcharge on the flight to Doha, but for an additional net cost of 525 quid, I was happy to add a trip to and from Doha. 525 quid for 2 long-haul Qatar Airways flights and 2 videos for the channel sounded like excellent value to me. It won't make sense for most of you, but it worked for me, and it gives you an idea of the sort of embellishments you can add when fleshing out these flights. It's many years since airlines gave agents commissions for flight bookings, so Propeller's business model is to charge a £100 booking fee per person. But for me, that was worth every penny, as they were able to get me on that JAL flight under an AA flight number. Now, Propeller is a specialist agency with a highly skilled and experienced team. They will help you and will potentially add value to your booking, but they're a small team with lots of other clients, so don't expect instant responses when you contact them. And they're flight bookers rather than consultants, so they'll help you optimize a trip you've outlined, but it's not realistic to expect them to plan an entire trip for you from scratch as part of that £100 fee. So I've ended up with a trip that I'm really happy with. In total, including that Doha shimmy, I'm still getting 18.7 tier points per pound for that net spend, valuing the avios at 1p, which is 26 points per pound if you value the 90,000 avios I'll earn at 2.5p each. I don't need the points from that Doha trip, but I want to cover Qatar Airways again on the channel, and I'll never get the chance to do so for less money. Without the code shares, I would have booked through the website, which would have been cheaper than paying Propeller's £100 booking fee. But if you like having a human help you, and you want to be certain about which airline will ticket you, Propeller's fee is not outrageous, and I'll stress again that working with experts may well produce a more rewarding outcome. Plus, quality agencies like Propeller are rare these days, and supporting them in this way, even if you might not absolutely have to, means there's a greater chance they'll be around in the future when you might really need their specialist help. A few points to quickly follow up on before I stop. Martin at Propeller was keen for me to reconsider my decision to move away from BA as my status airline, but my decision is made. He did, though, share how it is possible to get the 20,000 new tier points you need for BA Gold, so OneWorld Emerald, from one done 3 fare from Oslo, so for £3,800 plus taxes, which is perhaps 5.5 grand in total. Something like this. That's a lot of taxes and a lot of flying, but getting status with BA could cost you a lot less than you might think. Hello, the battery died. It's a couple of days later, so I'm back to wrap all of this up. And the exciting news is that my around the world trip has now ticketed. It ended up being ticketed by Japan Airlines. I have no idea why, but I'm all ready to go. I'm travelling in mid-September, so I'll need to join the Finnair scheme at the start of the month and change the loyalty program number that is in the reservation over to my new Finnair one as soon as I have it. From what I read online, that can be a little bit harder to achieve than it sounds, but I'll talk about that in a follow-up video to this when I've been able to do it myself. So thanks for watching, quite a long one, but hopefully it was packed with usefulness. Please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and please leave me a comment. Are you thinking about around the world after watching all of this nonsense? Please consider subscribing if you're new, and if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, there is a Patreon account, the link to which is below. Thanks again, see you later, cheers, good luck, have fun, goodbye.